Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the 250 events in the life of Jesus. And today we're in Matthew 13, 24 through 30, and we're looking at Jesus telling the parable of the weeds. And we're going to be in these parables probably for the next week or so. It's a series of parables that he told as he goes through and teaches, especially in Galilee. From the time he starts the parable, he teaches in parables all the way through. And so we start in verse 24 of Matthew 13, and it says that Jesus was told a story, right? Another story. He said, the kingdom of heaven is like a father who planted good seed in his field. I'm sorry, a farmer who planted good seed in his field. But then the night, as the worker slept, his enemy came in and planted weeds among the wheat, then slipped away. When the crop began to grow and produce grain, the weeds also grew. The farmer's workers went to him and said, Sir, the field where you planted the good seed is full of weeds. Where did they come from? He says, An enemy has done this, the farmer exclaimed. And they asked, should we pull these weeds out? And he says, No. He says, You'll uproot the wheat. If you do, let both of them grow together until the harvest. Then I will tell the harvesters to sort out the weeds, tie them into bundles, and burn them, and put the wheat into the barn. And so, more than likely, what you had here was the weed that they were talking about was called darnel, and is a type of weed that can hardly be extinguished from wheat, especially as it's growing. You really can't tell the difference until after it's matured. And so, so what it was hard to tell, and so they wouldn't be able to see that until it was grown up. And so, in an agricultural setting, and doing something like this, sowing darnel in someone else's field was a way for enemies to destroy. You could destroy someone's livelihood. It could be catastrophic by doing this. And so this is a picture, what Jesus is showing here. And this is something that's hard. I'll be honest with you. This is one that's hard for me to understand sometimes. But what Jesus is basically saying is he allows, Satan is going to have efforts to destroy the church, right? Or to deceive the church. And by doing it, he's going to mingle his own people inside the church. And so that's hard to understand. I don't understand that, but in some cases it's he's going to do it, making it impossible for believers to discern true and false. And so we've seen this. I mean, we've seen this, people who claim to be Christians, who call themselves Christians, call themselves leaders of the church, and they do some some things that are very immoral, and do that stuff and lead people astray. And we see these type of things, unfortunately. It's become more and more news type headlines. And so, but Jesus is warning us here that this is going to happen. And he uses this example of, yeah, we could uproot the darnel, we could uproot these weeds, but when we do, at the same time, we could destroy the wheat. And so the example that he's saying here is, yeah, I could go and uproot all the people who are doing things they shouldn't be doing inside the church, and or deceiving people in the church. But if by doing that, I could actually end up destroying my entire crop. I can end up destroying. And so for him, it's better to allow the wheat, or the weeds to come up together inside the church, right? The Christian and non-Christians, or the people of Satan, to come in, and then at the end separate them, and so that's a hard one to understand. I'll be honest with you. He's going to we're going to look at it further in verses 36 through 40, but I'm going to tell you, it's just one of those that for me is a hard one. It's like, why do you even allow him to sow in the first place? But it's like, this is, where we live is his kingdom. So it's where he has free reign. And so unfortunately, that is part of this process. And so that's why we have to be careful. We several weeks back, or several days back, I think a week or so back, we talked about, knowing people by their fruits. And this is one of those examples where, sometimes we may have people come up alongside us in the church, or alongside us in our Christianity, and they may end up showing us their true fruits, right, in the end. And we'll know people by their fruits in exactly the same way. They started to notice that, hey, these are weeds, this isn't wheat, by their fruit. And so we just got to, as Christians, be careful in that, because at the end he says any attempt to gather the weeds would only endanger the wheat. And sometimes it's not our job to go out and just try to rip everyone we think who might not be there. So let God sort it out in the end. You know, it's our job to preach Jesus. It's our job to behave like Jesus and act like Jesus in the church. And as leaders, right, it's our job to shepherd the church. And sometimes you're going to have to shepherd those who, you know, are not what they claim to be. But even then, you still have to shepherd, and you still have to, you know, bring them alongside. And in the end, right, it's God's you know, God will take care of that. God will take care of separating those who are his true followers and those who aren't his true followers in the end. And I say this, that can be a hard one sometimes. I'll be honest with you, it can be a hard one sometimes because, you know, it's one of those things. It's like, well, that's not fair. That's not, you know, and as I would always tell my daughter, life's not fair. We've got to learn to deal with it. And so we've just got to make sure as Christians, we are producing wheat, right? Well, we are producing the fruit that we're supposed to produce as Christians, and make sure that we are doing that. And again, I know this can be a hard one, and so I understand if this one takes a little bit. Read it a couple times and understand it. But the fact is, no matter how hard we try as Christians, sometimes there's always going to be people among us who maybe claim to be Christians or say they are, but they're not showing the fruits of that. And that's, you know, and you know, the Bible doesn't talk about this, but turning the weed into wheat, right? But maybe that's an opportunity for us. It's an opportunity for us to be the type of person we should be to those people if we're able to spot it, right? The worker spotted it, and if we're able to spot it. But it's not necessarily our job to you do something about it or take them out. He says, in the end, that's going to be God's job. It's going to be God's job to separate them. And so we just need to worry about making sure we do what we're supposed to do, and be the Christians that we're supposed to be in the end, and not focus too much on the others or who might not be doing what they're supposed to be doing, or may be the weeds, right, coming up in the church. And so again, you know, this is, like I said, that's a hard one to look at and study sometimes, but it's something that we need to make sure we practice. Again, I appreciate everyone who continues to watch these videos. If you find them useful, please share them with someone who they may be useful to. And as always, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, please do so. And as always, I appreciate you watching.